All right, welcome back to Daybreak. It's now 28 minutes past 7 o'clock, and here with Caleb Kositanyi, Member of Parliament for Soy constituency, Fred Okango, the Secretary General of Third Way Alliance. You may remember him from the Punguza Mizigo Initiative, and Senator Ledamo Lekina from Narok County, as well as Anthony Oloch, the Member of Parliament for Mathare constituency. We're having the conversation around what next for the BBI. We know that members of Parliament, well, a section of them are meeting in Naivasha for a retreat to pave the way forward for BBI. We understand that the party leader of ODM is also in Naivasha, and Stephen Leto will be talking to us about the latest in that county. But back in studio, so you hear the conversation, Honorable Kositanyi, the contest on what should happen, but let's specifically handle the question of IEBC. And I saw a tweet from Raila Odinga, the ODM party leader, calling out IEBC on the cost of referendum, because them they're saying it could cost up to 14 billion shillings to run a referendum. Then Raila Odinga says that that is too expensive, it doesn't make sense. But if you had to talk about the reconstitution, what do you think should happen before the said referendum to the IEBC commission that now has only 3 commissioners who were proposed to be revetted under the proposed BBI amendments?
Thank you, Sam. I think when we discuss the issue of IEBC, first of all, let us discuss the issue of the cost of the referendum, because this is very important. And you remember I said earlier, we may discuss all these BBI issues, but let us discuss it vis-a-vis our economic status as a country and what it will cost us for us to change the constitution or to make the amendments that are the proposed amendments. IEBC have given their costs of holding a referendum at approximately 13.9 billion, let's call it 14 billion. And we have had Raila Odinga say that would not be the cost, it should cost us 2 billion. But I want to say this, IEBC is an independent body with the specific role of conducting elections and referendum should that occur. The IEBC, as they see, what happens in law, the IEBC will wait until there is a requisition or a requirement that you are told, hey, give us a budget, we need to hold a referendum. Then IEBC will sit down and give an itemized budget that will come to the National Assembly with every cost to every particular item. Cost of transport, cost of ink, cost of biro pens, cost of advertisement, airspace, everything is itemized and arrive at a figure, which then is passed by the National Assembly, and Treasury then approves that and gives them the money. So it is not possible. And you know, one thing also that IEBC does, they cannot print ballot papers, less ballot papers than the registered voters. They should, if we are 19 million registered voters, they will assume that 19 million people will vote. So they will print 19 million ballot papers. So we cannot save on the cost of printing that. And that is why I hold the view that we actually need to see as a country, can we afford it? And that is a question that we need answered. But when we come to the issue of the commissioners, yes, we have 3 commissioners, 4 resigned. They have been given jobs as ambassadors. We thank His Excellency the President for considering them. But we also need now to say, as you said earlier, the Kriegler report proposed that we should never have an IEBC change 2 years to an election. I think we are already less than 2 years to the next general election. But we need other commissioners so that the IEBC is properly constituted. But I want to say this as a politician and as a leader in this nation. It really doesn't matter. It should never matter to any serious politician who sits in IEBC. It should matter to you how popular you are with the voters and how you carry out your campaigns. We have to stop this thing of after every election, we want to change the IEBC because we lost an election. We have refused to accept that result, and we think that if we have a certain person of certain inclinage in the IEBC, then you will be announced the winner. The IEBC's role is to conduct the election, oversee that everything is done according to the law, and announce the results as they have received them. So IEBC is not a voter. And I think we actually need to give independent institutions like IEBC the space to carry out their work. I am not speaking on behalf of anybody in IEBC. I am speaking as a key player in the politics of this country. And the proposal there, Sam, that political parties will propose the membership of IEBC. We have what criteria is used to identify the political parties that will propose members to IBC. How many of those political parties? Because as it is now, it looks like it will be the Jubilee and the ODM that will propose a Third Way Alliance. I don't know whether the voice will be heard, and many other political
They're supposed to
parties.
be parliamentary parties. But let's, before we get into the depth of it, let's talk about this question about the cost. Because looking at a press statement from the IEBC saying that the 2010 referendum cost 10 billion shillings. At that time, there were 12.6 million registered voters, and the number of polling stations were 27,689. And so the cost per voter was 794. Then the 2017 fresh presidential election, and this is because this is a single ballot process, 19.6 million voters in 2017, 40,883 polling stations, and the cost was 11.9 billion shillings. That's almost 12 billion shillings, giving a cost per vote of 607. The 2021 proposed referendum, then they are saying, should be estimated at 13.7 billion shillings, taking into consideration the cost of COVID and what would be required to ensure that there's adherence with the Ministry of Health regulations. And so, Fred Okango, I remember that in 2017, I don't know whether you were at Third Way Alliance, but I remember then party leader, or the contested party leader, was very vocal about how IBC was doing its business, bearing in mind that he was a presidential candidate. But do you raise any doubts on the estimated cost of a referendum at 13.7 billion shillings? Would you side with what Raila Odinga is saying, that IBC is becoming the problem to the management of elections in this country?
IBC is an independent institution, and therefore in them being independent, they've got a way of working, and they should be allowed to do that. However, referendum is like voting, and the requirement is that in whatever method is used by IBC to secure or ensure that vote happens, it must be verifiable, it must be efficient, it must be accountable, it must be transparent. If IBC can prove that, then no one has a problem with them. Number two, the people that submitted to the task force, BBI, said that it will be important for Kenyans to go into the next election with a clean slate IBC. It appears the public has lost confidence in IBC, given the election violence that has been witnessed before. And in 2017, where even some individuals came out and claimed that the elections were not fair, So we saw economic meltdown that comes with those violence. For me, in terms of cost, what is the cost of electoral violence? What is the cost of disputed election? What is the cost of death that comes with the divisive election every 5 years? That cost is higher than the cost of conducting a one-day referendum at 14 billion. And therefore, I submit that this country must sort the issues once and for all. The issue that the Kenyan people have identified through the report is that in every 5-year cycle, we go for an election, we fight, because we don't believe that the referee is fair, because we don't believe that some politicians play a fair game, because the conduct of IBC has been put into question. Therefore, the proposal that the BBI gives is that, number one, we must ensure that we vet. And I don't think the BBI is saying overhaul IBC. No, the BBI has proposed that in doing that, let us vet all the IB officers. Number two, let us ensure that the officers, the returning officers, perform their duty on a contract basis of 3 years, renewable only once. Let us also ensure that the IEBC, their staff, all of them are vetted. And lastly, let us ensure that in doing this, the elections are verifiable, transparent, and accountable. The reason why that is there is because from where we are coming from. I have seen with the complaints.
Those are some of the recommendations by the Constitutional Amendment Bill under the BBI report. But there are two issues there. You have the question about the persons managing the elections, but also the cost. And if the cost of bread is 50 shillings, whether it's sold to you by Fred or by Kosita, it needs to still be 50 shillings. So in your view, what is the reasonable cost of a one ballot process?
I'm not an expert in costing the ballot papers, but the
experts have told you it's going to cost 50
and that's why I started by saying IBC is independent. While they should be allowed to be independent, and they should be for sure, we also need to look at where we are coming from. We need to look at what the people want through the proposed recommendations. What do they want? The people want a clean process. How do you achieve a clean process? It's not about the cost. It's about what has happened before. If the cost of what has happened before, as a result of the same institution, I'm not demonizing institution, but I'm saying this is a collaboration. Remember, IBC is independent, but it's also interdependent. Honorable Kositanyi and Mheshimiwa Antonio Luoch will have to give these gentlemen at IBC a budget to go and do this referendum. If today there is a fight, how will they ensure that? So for me, in my view, I'm thinking that the recommendations that have been put in place to ensure that we have an IBC that is transparent, efficient, and accountable must be in place. Number two, in terms of...
I need to cut you short because I need to bring in the views of Antonio Luoch to the fore, because your party leader, Raila Odinga, says that elections have become one of the major avenues for ripping off the country through various schemes that are never meant to save costs or yield credible results, but to line pockets of individuals. Those schemes are evident in the IEBC's latest reasoning. And I read the final paragraph of his statement saying that shortly we will pick a team to sit with IEBC and itemize what will lead to a cost-effective referendum exercise and elections. IEBC seems to be determined never to develop an operational performance that contains costs. And this is your party leader. He has had issues with IEBC for a long time, including the 2017 election and even the repeat election. So where do you sit with all this contestation about the costs as well as the persons that are managing the elections? Oluoch.
First of all, about the cost, if we separate the issues about the disputed elections and the position the Prime Minister has had and the contestations with IEBC, I think the basic principle that we must take away from his statement is that elections in Kenya are prohibitively high. The fact that we have done them at the cost that IEBC has given us does not mean that we cannot now sit and do what we call a cost analysis. Let's look at other countries. I think I've heard the Prime Minister to be saying that if you compare the cost of doing elections in Kenya with other countries within our jurisdiction in Africa and indeed the world, the costs are too high. There needs to be a point at which, even as we do the budget making process, it is not enough for them to give us the costs of a pen and paper and all that. There is also what you call economies of scale. When you're printing millions and millions of ballot paper, where can we save this and that? When you are printing and sourcing, who can give us the most competitive prices? I think that's the point that I take away from that, and we must restrict our issues to, is it too expensive to carry out elections in Kenya? Second point that I want to make is on the question of the cost-benefit analysis generally about doing this election, the referendum, sorry, vis-a-vis the gains that will come as a result of this. And I want to persuade us that what is coming post a referendum, even at a cost of 2, 3, or 40 billion shillings, whatever it will be, cannot be compared with what we are going to sacrifice. We are going to deal with the question of inclusivity, and I have argued here before that inclusivity in this sense must be looked at very, very broadly, not just within the premises of the positions that are being created. There is the youth, the gender issues being solved, there is the increase of resources to the county, and all that are coming with it. The second point then that I want to make is on the question of composition. And I think this bill attempts to deal with two things. One, that we've had a limping IEBC with 3 commissioners and not a process within which we can replace the other commissioners. That now has been cured. There is a process for replacement of the 4 commissioners. There is a process to rebed the 2. If they pass, they will become continuing commissioners. So I do not agree with Kositanyi that we are overhauling the commission. We are not. And then there is a provision of a 4-year, one-term tenure. And what this cures then is that we don't have people who go into the IEBC and have entrenched positions and feel that IEBC is them and they are IEBC. You conduct one election and move home. So I agree with that position.
But Antonio Luoch, don't you think, you're saying that you're not overhauling the commission, but proposals that returning officers can only serve on part-time basis and they can only oversee a single election, a single general election rather, and saying that the CEO should only serve for 3-year term renewable once, then the secretariat, the members of the secretariat or the staff members can only serve for 3-year contracts renewable once. Don't you think then you'll affect the historical perspective of a commission and also the ability for them to grow the expertise? As you manage more elections, you become better at your job.
The institutional memory of IEBC is domiciled in the directorates. There is a directorate which is separate from the CEO. It runs, and the bureaucracy runs irrespective of who is heading the directorate and who is the CEO.
But
so if you're talking about...
But the staff has said they'll serve for 3 years, renewable once, and they'll be encouraged to leave. They must leave after 6 years.
That is in respect of the position of commissioner. They serve 4-year term. In respect of the secretariat itself, and I think it makes sense, is that once you have done one election, that is a 5-year period and 1 year where you can help to transition so that the person who is coming in can then take over. The thing that we must deal with in IEBC is to avoid people who go there and have entrenched positions. We can have a bureaucracy and an institutional memory that remains, but the people around the issues, the people who manage the elections, beginning from the returning officers. There is no reason why we can have returning officers having a fixed contract of 5, 6, or 8 years. Returning officers exist to carry out a certain election, carry out post-election issues, including election petitions. And when those things are over, our returning officers can move on, get redeployed, do other things. So I don't think that that amounts to overhauling of IEBC. The institutional memory of IEBC and the bureaucracy is domiciled in the directorates, which remain in place. They are not overhauled. Thirdly, the issue I wanted to raise is that the bill has attempted to try and put into effect the reasoning of Justice Mativo, who said and tried to deal with the question of nomination, and which can help us deal also with the issue of gender. That the primary responsibility of dealing with nomination disputes and nomination lists and all that is with the political party, and then secondly with IEBC. So that IEBC, in carrying out its functions, among other things, are supposed to take into account Article 54 that deals with the youth, to ensure their inclusion, and Article 81B that deals with the gender issue. And lastly, to say then that political parties' disputes are removed from IEBC. IEBC now remains with the question of conducting an election. Having said that, allow me just 1 minute to address a few issues that were raised, one by Senator Oledama, that Senate has been downgraded. I think Senate is not downgraded. Senate exists, if you look at the provisions of the Constitution on representation, to protect the counties. That has not been taken away. The mere fact that 47 women have been put in the Constitution only strengthens the Senate. And I would like Oledama to tell me, or the Kenyans, that putting women, and he says we are diluting Senate by taking women and putting there. Is he arguing that women are the reason for the dilution of the Senate? I think not. Let me go lastly to the question of Dora and Kara. He spoke very passionately, and I think sometimes looking a little bit too angered and bitter. And I would like to advise him to take Jackson Mandago's advice. Don't put these things too much in your heart. Put them in your lungs, breathe them in and out. I also made provisions and recommendations to the experts in the BBI in relation to matters of the youth. There are about 300 and other people who made recommendations. It was not possible that all of them must find their way here for this to reflect the will of the people. If and when we cannot have an uncontested referendum, then the Article 257 is clear. The will of the people is going to be determined at the vote. So it cannot be that because my view is not here, and I, as Anthony Oluoch, had a whole list of proposals about the youth and legislation and all that. They're not here. It doesn't mean it doesn't reflect the will of the people. On the issue of Dora and Kara, he spoke about per capita, which has been introduced and therefore complicating the issue of revenue allocation. I have tried to look at the proposed amendment inside out to Article 215, and with all due respect, I do not see that provision. Secondly, the way in which revenue budget-making process has been done remains the same. National Assembly is still the budget-making house. Bills originate, if they originate from the Senate, if they are county bills, they come to the National Assembly and vice versa. So in respect of that, I respectfully like to submit that Senator Oledama may need to relook properly at the provisions that have been put in this. Yes.
All right, Oluoch, he's Senator Ledama, not Oledama, but all the same, Senator Ledama. Before I raise questions with you, I want to take a look at some of the proposals. I mean, actually, what the law says after being assented to by the president on the picking of new commissioners. If you have those slides, you can look at them and see that now there's a selection panel that has been established, that it will have 4 persons coming from the Parliamentary Service Commission and 1 person each coming from the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, NCCK, SUPKEM, as well as the National Muslim Leadership Forum and the Council of Imams and Preachers of Kenya, then the Evangelists Association of Kenya, then the HCK, the Hindu Council of Kenya, and the National Council of Persons with Disability will propose 1 person to constitute the selection panel. And as they do that, these are the qualifications for you to be considered for position as a commissioner. Of course, you must not have run for election in the previous 5 years. Then you must have a university degree with a proven experience in electoral matters, management, finance, questions of management, as well as the other qualifications that you must have is you may also have experience in governance, public administration, law, and meet Chapter 6 qualifications. And then there's something else that is to do with the commission will have 7 members. There will be 4 members to represent parliamentary parties. This is according to the BBI proposals. It's not yet law. Then the tenure should be for 4 years, and the commissioners currently in office, including Wafula Chebukati, to be revetted before they can continue working. And Senator Ledama Olekina, so now with law assented to by the president now, should we now start the process of picking new commissioners, or should we wait for the BBI process that also reduces the tenure to 4 years?
So before I answer your question, I need to clarify a few issues
which
have been raised, because I think they are more important than moving away from there. Now, my dear brother, Ken Oluoch, not Ken Oluoch, Anthony Oluoch, the BBI says that no county shall get 3 times higher the per capita of any other county. I'll give you some examples. And if you're going to be in Naivasha today, I will actually go to the document and show it to you. If you look at currently, the way it is, if you look at a county like Isiolo, it's 4.4 times higher, the lowest county. And the lowest county probably being 1.5. When you look at a county like Lamu, the per capita currently, as per the 2019-2020 shareable revenue, is 18,000 shillings per person. If you compare that with a county, but then the population of that county is only 143,000. If you compare that with a county like Isiolo, that has got 268,000 people, and their per capita is 15,000 shillings. What the BBI is proposing is that currently that county is getting 2.9 billion. If you actually take, like, let's say, for instance, 1 trillion shillings, you will see how much money that county will lose. If you now take away 1 billion shillings from a county like Lamu, because you do not want this issue of per capita. And those were the issues that we're dealing with when we were dealing with the issue of revenue share. Mm-hmm. The fight there was squarely on the issue of per capita. That is the reason why you could see that debate of 1 man, 1 shilling. In fact, what the BBI is proposing is to take away all the gains that all the country made when we had a non-contested 3rd generation revenue formula. Mm-hmm. Because now what they're proposing is that, no, forget about that. Do 1 man, 1 shilling. And the issue that is in terms of the issue of the role of the Senate, to tell you the truth, and I'd like to sit down with you over a cup of coffee, go through every single proposal that has been made for the Senate, vis-a-vis the proposal that have been made for the National Assembly, and then do a comparative analysis with other jurisdictions, other countries, to see what the role of the Senate is. And I want to reiterate, because it is important, because you raise this issue, that we are not, the BBI as it is right now, does not have anything for women. It doesn't. Let us not lie. Because right now, the women in the National Assembly have a budget of about 100 million or 70 million shillings, which they can be able to use to support women in their counties. When they come to the Senate, they get 0. Okay? Now, the 70 seats which are being proposed, they have not been proposed for women.
Right.
They have said it's for universal suffrage. In fact, when you look at a county like Kiambu, they end up getting about 23 of those seats because it's a one man, one vote, one shilling. So really, it complicates quite a lot of things. And now to the issue that I think Sam raised in terms of the cost of the referendum. In fact, when you look at, this is why I always say people should read. Take their time and read, because then you will understand the role of each institution. The proposed amendment to the Elections Act 2011, if you look at a new insertion section of 12A, it clearly says as follows: the Commission shall at least 18 months to a general election compile and publish an election timetable specifying the activities to be undertaken during the election cycle, the duration of each activity, and final day of each activity. And most importantly, procurement of electoral equipment and other electoral material in line with the law relating to public procurement. Develop and public develop. It's supposed to be development and publication of regulations on elections campaign financing. Recruit, training, deployment, voter registration, personnel, election officer. And then education of voters.
Right.
If we're now talking about the cost of the referendum, all these issues will have to be taken into consideration. The Commission should have to come up with their budget and say, for us to be able to carry out this, this referendum, this is how much it will cost. We're giving it to the National Assembly, this is how much money we need.
Right.
The debate on whether it will cost 2 billion or 12 billion should really be should be enlightened by the provision of the new section which is being inserted in the Elections Act 12A, once they have carried out the line item budget.
Right. I know that is what the IBC chairperson of Wafula Chebukati is saying, that Raila Odinga should have consulted with the expert body in managing the elections. But Anthony Loch, I wanted to refer you to page 112 of the BBI report that proposes what I was telling you about, the administrative changes and of ensuring that IBC staff, all IBC staff should be employed on a 3-year contract, renewable only once. That is all staff, not the heads of directorates. But Honorable Kositany, you'll have the final word on this conversation. You've been pretty quiet today, but so with all this going on, of course, you're saying that it doesn't matter who the referee is, but then there is that proposal in the Constitutional Amendment Bill that the tenure of the commissioners should be changed and that the current commissioners should be reverted vis-a-vis the new law that shows how new commissioners should be picked. Which one should we follow?
I think, let me say this, Sam, that we need to be honest when we are making these contributions to Kenyans, that the talk that we're not overhauling IBC is just a lie. You have seen the proposals there on reverting of the current commissioners. That those proposals are meant to actually send home the Chebukati team and bring in a whole new team against the recommendations made by the Kriegler team commission that we should not change the IBC before any election. But let me say this, Sam. To sort out all this matter, and as of my friend here, Fred, was saying the cost of electoral violence, the cost, what we need to cheapen the change in, and the cost of our elections and the cost of violence is for us, those who are contesting, to know that when you are entering a contest, there will be a winner and there will be a loser. Just let us learn to accept the results as announced by IEBC. It really does not matter. Even if Caleb Kositany is made the chairman of IBC and William Ruto, who is my friend, is contesting and he loses the election, I will announce the results as has been given, as the way Kenyans have voted. And that is what we need to accept. So let us stop taking each other for a ride, that if you have a person who is friendly to you, you know, what has happened is people have internalized this thing that elections are rigged, it is not easy. It is not easy to rig an election. It is not easy.
But it's possible, isn't it?
It would be so obvious. It would be right there in the open. So it is not. So let us stop this thing that a friendly IBC will give you a favorable result. What matters is your relationship with Kenyans. Let us talk to the people, because the bosses, eventually the people who have the sovereign will and sovereign authority to elect their leaders, is the people of Kenya.
Caleb Kositany, Member of Parliament for Soi constituency. Thank you so much. Fred Okango from Third Way Alliance, and Senator Ledamo Lekina. He is Fred Okango, and he is Anthony Oluoch. Anthony Oluoch is Senator Ledamo Lekina of Narok County. We'll do another forum so that we can know each other's names. But all the same, all the best, Senator Lekina, as you head to Naivasha. And we'll be sure we'll be depending on you to hear what transpires there, even as we listen to Stephen Little. We take a short break here, but Willis Raburu and his panel of, are they experts? They'll be here, eminent persons will be here to review the action that was over the weekend, including some wins from some very good football teams, including Manchester City, despite it being 1-0. They'll be talking about that after the break.